This is Heather Neuenschwander from Flute Specialists, and I am here today with Dr. Timothy Hagen to talk today about their new piece, Bad Birds, written for piccolo and G treble flute, or a version for two piccolos, to be premiered this year at the Flute Specialists Exhibit Showcase in Phoenix in August. Hi, Timothy, how are you?
I'm fine, Heather. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Happy to be here with you. Tell us about the piece.
Well, I'm happy to be here with you too. And Bad Birds was a real blast to write, so I hope you enjoy playing it. It is inspired by the Arizona, the home of this year's NFA convention, the Arizona state bird, the roadrunner. And I thought, what better use for a piece for two very, very, very treble instruments than to have them pretend to be crazy, chaotic roadrunners, chasing after each other, trying to catch each other, trying to play, trying to do whatever is in their little chaotic minds. So that was sort of the genesis of the piece. It was the inspiration.
So I think you've said it a little bit, but tell me a little bit more how you really decided on the style that you wanted to write in.
So I have a long history with the Roadrunner. The middle school where I went to fifth, sixth, seventh grades long time ago had each grade was divided into teams, and so as a fifth grader I was a Roadrunner. That was one of the teams, and so I've been a Roadrunner of sorts. And when Flute Specialists so kindly approached me about writing something, my brain just sort of immediately, I think, went through some crazy subliminal back door to roadrunners. I know something about roadrunners. The roadrunners are in Arizona. It's the state bird, right? Let's look it up on Wikipedia. Right, it's the state bird. And so then I just started running with all of the things we associate with the roadrunner. I tend to think of him, her, them as a little chaos goblin. Yeah, we're used to them in the cartoons thwarting the coyote all the time. The coyote's trying to eat them. I get it. But I mean, this is like a crazy little animal that can paint a tunnel into a rock and then disappear through the tunnel. And so I thought, this is a fun idea. The idea of trying to wrangle chaos is sort of the idea for a piece. And I think you see that a lot also in cartoon music, because cartoon music, especially if you hear it without the picture, is pretty chaotic and can be atonal and disorienting. But I think that ties in really well to the nature of the Roadrunner, just being a chaos goblin. And another association with the Roadrunner, of course, is the iconic beep beep. Thinking of the cartoon Roadrunner. And for me, for someone of my generation, when I hear beep beep, I also can't help think of Donna Summer and her iconic track Bad Girls. And so that's where I took the name of the piece from, Bad Birds. These are roadrunners who never end up where they're supposed to go, where you want them to go, where they need to be. They are just bad, but they're fun.
I feel that we have three different premieres we're doing for this showcase, and I feel that each one really shows a bit of the composer's personality, and you coming up with this idea to connect the Roadrunner and Donna Summers. It's just feels like such a perfect compilation of parts of your personality.
Yeah, I would say so. I've always loved fairy tales and cartoons. I've always been a very imaginative person, and so I spoke a minute ago about that tie-in between middle school me and the Roadrunner, and so I think that's very present. And then I love pop. I love dance pop music. I do. I've always loved it. Like growing up as a kid, the first things I remember sort of really connecting with musically, just hearing them on the radio, were, it was music by Madonna or, Wham with George Michael. You just really fun dance music. And then I got a little older and discovered Donna Summer by that time, and really connected to disco, because disco is a kind of a genre of music that's gotten a bad rap. I think a lot of people whole there was this whole movement basically to kill disco, this whole anti-disco movement in the late 70s and early 80s. And I think that just stems from people's own ideas and dare I say prejudices about what music is and what it should be. Disco's fun, disco's wonderful, disco's a celebration. And so I was happy to find, to think of this link between Donna Summer and Roadrunner and infuse a little bit of disco into the piece.
That's amazing. The piece is absolutely fabulous. We've had a lot of fun preparing it. I'll be playing the G treble flute, which is an interesting beast to tame. And you wrote some very difficult licks for it. I'm very excited to show them off, including the little meep meep.
Yes, that's right. Everybody gets a meep meep a few times, actually. Yeah.
Quite a few, yeah. So tell me a little bit about the compositional challenges that you encountered with this piece.
So I did what I usually do when I write a piece and I'm working with a commissioner. I wrote the piece as sort of I heard it, imagined it in my head. And then and this is one of the things I love about composing and working with commissioners actually is it's collaborative. Then I gave the piece to you and you said, well, these things are great. These things we're not so sure about. And then it becomes the conversation. And so that was really that was just as fun this time as it always is. I've never written for G treble flute, and so I appreciated all of the wisdom and knowledge that you gave me about the instrument and where its little, idiosyncrasies lie that might be different from the piccolo or the flute. And so that was, it's always challenging to write for an instrument you've never written for and then hope for the best, but you really were so helpful in helping me overcome that challenge by saying, this doesn't work, but maybe if you tweak this or change these notes. So it was a challenge, but I had support, so it was great.
It was a great conversation. The piece itself is a conversation, so it's very interesting then that the conversation we had behind the scenes and figuring out this treble flute, which I imagine, I'm not a composer obviously, but writing for an instrument you don't have there in your hands does seem like a challenge, doesn't it?
It is a challenge, and it's so funny because when I first started composing really 20 years ago, I wrote everything with my flute in my hands. I needed to be able to play it to make sense of it. I do less and less of that now. So I feel like this project came at a time when I was ready for it, which is something I really appreciate. It's one of those little universe gifts that we get from time to time.
Yeah. And after the premiere, I'm excited to try the two piccolos version. I don't think I'll do it before. My fingers know this part.
That's right. You don't block yourself. That's right.
Do you have anything else to say about what makes this piece quite unique?
I don't. I can't think of where else you're going to hear a piece that incorporates Looney Tunes and Donna Summer. And there's, listeners should listen for a familiar little melodic tag at the end of the piece that sort of sums up what the whole piece is about, I think. And also, it's just such a wonderful opportunity to be able to write for an instrument that doesn't get written for very much, the treble flute and G. And so, I'm really grateful to you, to Flute Specialists, for spearheading this commission and expanding the repertoire for instruments that just don't have a lot of music. So it's like every piece for this instrument is a distinct little gem right now because there's so few of them.
Well, thank you for making my plug for me. That's exactly what we're doing at Flute Specialists. We are expanding the repertoire for these lesser known instruments. It's our second year doing these commissions for these pieces. And thank you for being a part of that and helping expand that repertoire. So take a moment here. Do you have anything that you want to plug? Any other projects?
Oh yes, there are a lot of compositions coming down the pike. I'm about halfway through a flute and piano piece inspired by the Paris Conservatory repertoire that is being written for a consortium of performers and teachers in California, led by Dr. Jenny Olson, who is, and I always hate saying old friend, longtime friend of mine from our days back in California about 20 years ago. And I'm writing this piece and a solo piccolo piece for this consortium she's leading. There's an oboe and piano piece coming in September. There's a clarinet, saxophone, and piano piece coming at some point. And then something that I won't say too much about right now, but just sort of a little preview. Perhaps the biggest, boldest challenge that's coming up is I am actually going to be able to write my flute concerto, and it's being commissioned and premiered, and everything is falling into place. And I'll share more details about who, what, when, where, and why through my social media channels when all those details have been set. But yeah, lots of fun, exciting stuff on the horizon.
Well, pre-congratulations, and we all heard it here first. We're very excited, and we're going to hold you to that. You will give us more information as that evolves.
Believe me, I will. Absolutely. I promise.
Awesome. But first, we're all going to make sure that those of us at the National Flute Association Convention in Phoenix for 2023, we're going to go see the premiere of Bad Birds, written by Dr. Timothy Hagen for piccolo and G treble, but also a version for two piccolos. Thanks so much for telling us about the piece today.
Oh, thank you, Heather. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.